somebody who has had an interest in timber since I was a child, really. My father was very much into planting shelter belts, and his father before him and grandfather all planted little bits of woodland. So I had an interest in timber, and I think every farm in the country should have some element of timber on it. But anyway, I'm here to talk a little bit about my experiences from clearfelling timber, figure out how this works. Yeah. So I'm going to look fairly quickly at the following topics. The plantation itself, the basic what it was, what it is, preparation for clearfelling, choosing buyers and harvesters, replanting, revenues, costs and taxation, very, very briefly on the latter point. I should have really put in another heading there between choosing buyers and harvesters, monitoring the process while it's ongoing. So we'll look at that fairly quickly. So the forest itself was planted in 1994, it was felled only a couple of years ago. 1994, it's in a special protection area, a hen harrier area, which a lot of people will be familiar with, which is a major issue. One of the issues that had caused for us was that we could only clearfell during effectively the winter months, which is good for the hen harrier, but not great for the fisheries people, and not great for the local roads and for harvesting contractors or anybody else. And you'd wonder to what result or to what purpose, but anyway, that's another matter. It was clearfelled in 2021-22, and it's one of the small advantages of the hen harrier. I had to clear over the winter, which meant, as Tim Ryan said a minute ago, that the actual harvesting was done over 2 tax years, which reduced effectively the USC bill from my point of view. We had 2 thinnings done in that forest over the years and had a yield class of maybe 24, 26. 21 metres top height on average at the end of the day, 25 centimetres average DBH, and there was still a high stocking density because it wasn't thinned probably hard enough to begin with. And effectively, there was about that volume, 470 cubic metres. I think I make the point there that effectively it could have been let go for longer. It was only 28 years old, it was harvested, but prices were good, and I'll come to that in a minute. So preparing for that started a long time back. It started with putting in brash plats, I suppose 15 years before that. And I think from my own experience, I can't overemphasize the advantages of having access into the forest. The brash plats initially allowed you to go in and to look, it allowed people going in to measure, it allowed people to go in who were planning on harvesting for thinning. And you saw what was in front of you, you could see what you had to do, and it gave you much clearer. So brash plats early on essential. Thinning racks of course gives you that access later on, but the two added together give you access, and access is critical. Started the felling licence process in 2019, that's the Clearfell licence. We were lucky enough, we got through quickly enough, simply because we ended up hiring our own ecologist to speed up the process. Added to the cost, but it was well worth it as it turned out. Plots were taken in 2021, and we had taken over the years as well. Could have grown more, as I said. There was still plenty of growth potential in the timber, but I can go back to Martine earlier on and talking about when to cut and whatever else, and certainly plots and measurements and everything else are very, very useful and probably essential. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is when can you get a good price for the timber? And prices hit an all-time high 2 years ago. I had a felling licence in place. It would have held for another 7, 8 years, but we decided to go there and then because effectively I felt, and I think I was right, that we could have got more volume by waiting a few years, but possibly no more revenue because the prices would have dropped, and indeed they have dropped since. And as well as that, you're well into your second rotation, which at 74 years of age I may or may not see the Clearfell stage of, but anyway, you're into the second rotation, so it's moving on. So there's an advantage in maybe going early sometimes. There was a hen harrier constraint, which I've already mentioned, that limited when we could cut. We did road and turntable upgrades. They'd been in obviously for thinnings earlier on, we upgraded those at a reasonable bit of cost. We put a bit of money into that. We extended the road a little bit to make it more usable. We upgraded the turntable out at a steep site, so it took a bit of, as I say, renovation and reparation, but it worked, and we didn't have any difficulties. And here is the crucial bit from my point of view in the preparation. There are a variety of ways of selling timber, and all of which have their own merits. And one of those ways is to sell by category. One is to actually deliver the timber to the sawmill. One is to sell it roadside. You talk to different people, they'll have different views on that, and they will have reasons for their views. My reason was simple. I had pretty good measurements done. I had a good idea what was in the forest. I had my own forester look at it, and I'm kind of able to measure timber myself, and we did a good lot of looking around, and I had a good idea what was coming out. So I decided to look for a standing price. In that situation, people come along and they make you an offer on a price per cubic metre coming out of the wood at the end of the day, over the weighbridge into the sawmill. So it's a standing price. You're not concerned then over the timber category. You know, if I sell it standing, if I sell it by category, there's going to be arguments over whether that piece of timber is actually sawlog, whether it's pulp, or whether it's pallet. And there's room for a bit of trickery here and there along the way as well. But by selling it standing, then I've no further worries about it, and it's in the interest of the sawmill or the purchaser to get the best he can out of it, and more luck to him that he or she can get the best they can from the timber you're selling. So you get a single price per tonne for all timber. The other small advantage is that the purchaser pays all the costs and organises all the contractors. So with some of the other methods of sales, you have to worry about getting the timber to the mill or getting it on the roadside. I paid nothing to anybody. The only thing I paid for was a camera. The purchaser is responsible for looking after the entire operation, so it's out of my hands then. And that works if you have a good idea of what's in there to begin with. And if you have no idea what's in there to begin with, then somebody is possibly going to lose, more likely yourself. But you need a reasonably good idea what's in there. What I did then was, you have to choose a buyer and choose a harvesting contractor, and those are two critical things. So I approached three potential sawmill customers. Mine was Clearfell, it was a reasonably good crop, with a good lot of sawlog in it. I approached three potential sawmill customers who would be interested in that kind of final products. And they came and inspected the plantation. I went around with them, we looked at it and we discussed what we saw and what we didn't see. And they did their own plots and they did their own measurements, as you'd expect. And I accepted the best negotiated price, and it was a negotiated price. Now, I will admit I was very fortunate when I fell. Timber prices were very good and there was a lot of competition for timber. I accepted the best negotiated price, but also looked at other things. It's like everything else, the best price isn't always the best price, because it looks at the history of the company or the firm, their payments, records, when they pay, payment schedules, how quickly the timber is removed from the roadside. Now, up where I have the timber up in Rare Cross, it probably puts on weight if it's left on the roadside, but very often timber can lose weight in dry weather. And you're actually, so if it's left standing on the roadside for a long time, you are the loser. So we looked at those kind of things and we agreed eventually with one purchaser. Set out a brief contract setting out the price per tonne, removal and payment schedule, which are the critical things, and the various responsibilities of the vendor and the purchaser. What was I expected to do and to provide, and what was the purchaser, the sawmill in this case, going to, what was his obligation. I didn't insist, I asked, that's the wrong word there, I asked that my own long-term harvesting contractor be used. I'd used the same contractor over the years for thinning and everything else, and the sawmill agreed readily once they knew who the person was, because they said he's familiar with the site and everything else, which he was. So that was fine. long-term harvesting contract, a very genuine guy, and I knew that he'd do no messing with either me or the sawmill. He was neutral in that respect. It was harvested between October 21 and February 22, as I said, across two tax years, as it turned out. Okay, so the supervision then and ongoing tasks while the thing was being harvested, what happens? Well, the first thing was the sawmill said it to me, and it would have known anyway, I suppose. I put a camera in place at the site entrance. Bought a camera from a man who's here today, actually. I think it cost me something like €350 or something. It's a motion activated camera, only one entrance to the site. Every time anybody, including the local deer, went in and out of the forest, the camera would click and a text message was sent to my phone. Pick up the phone, there's a photograph of what just went in and what didn't go in. Very effective, very simple. I used the docket box system, which is the standard system, docket box at the site. The lorry driver is meant to phone me or text me before half an hour or so before he reaches the site to say, I'm on my way. It's a standard text on the phone, not difficult for him. And if I go up to the site then, he's gone in, I expect to find the docket in the box. And he usually would have said on that docket what he went in for, what kind of timber he was going to collect on that day, because he was taking out the different categories. Even though it made no difference to me, it was a very useful exercise for me at the end of the day, because a lot of people said to me, well, you're going to lose money by not selling it by category. So I had all the different categories that actually went out. And at the end of the day, I didn't lose money. Or neither did the sawmill. It worked out about the same as it would by selling it by category, but with none of the additional complications and hardships from my point of view. So the docket box and text messaging system, and I think that's been upgraded now. There's another system coming in, but that was a very effective and very efficient system. Good harvesting contractor, no site damage issues. He knew the site from his previous work there. There was no damage done to the site, which is critical as well. No issues with runoff into the river. There's a river, a fairly major river at the bottom of our site. The harvesting contractor managed it well, and he used to phone me and say, you need a few more bales of straw here or there, which I provided, and that was it. He also helped liaise with the sawmill and the lorry drivers. So the sawmill, instead of coming to me, they might say, Sean, could you, we want a few extra loads of pallets next week. We have a customer, we want to do an extra load of log. Can you maximise that for next week? And he did that. So very simple. I kept the road access up to standard required. We had to get lorries of stone in halfway between in and out. I have a small digger, well, a die essentially. I kept it on the site and kept the loads of stone level if they were needed. Not very many, but a few here and there, potholes appeared and so on. I checked the dockets, the texts and the camera constantly, and I sent invoices to the sawmill, and there was never an issue. We never had a single issue. I took the dockets out of the box. They send me at the same time the list of their docket counterparts that they had got from the lorry drivers, and they send me on copies of those and the details, the type of timber that went out. Not that it mattered to me from a price point of view, but as I said, it allowed me to compare how I might have done selling it by category compared to selling it as a standing overall price. There was never an issue. And I kept a spreadsheet on an Excel package on a computer, very simple. I'm not really an expert on spreadsheets or computers, but I kept a simple spreadsheet to record the dates, the loads, the volume. Every time I got the categories in from the sawmill, I recorded them on this, and the payments as they came in. So I had the whole lot at the end of the day, very, very simple. So the supervision ongoing task, critical. And it can be very simple, as I said. So the replanting then, we started that pretty soon after the final trees went out. There are a lot of points of view on that. Teagasc people may not agree with me, but we started fairly soon, simply because the site was clean at that stage. There was no vegetation removed. So it was easier to walk on and to get around, and easier for the guys planting and everybody else. And it minimises competition for new trees, because the grass and the vegetation didn't get growing for another 12 months more or less. In an ideal world, I would have taken the brash off from the site, because you have a cleaner you're familiar with brash, I presume, this idea of what's the residue left over after the trees. A lot of it will be used under the harvester for a pathway, for a track, and that's essential on my side because of water runoff into that river, so you don't want dirt building up. So a lot of it will be used for that. But if you could remove the brash, it would be cleaner and an easier worked site. Brash, they make the, what do they call them, they row up the brash rows after the harvesting before they start planting again. And they cause weeds and they cause a lot of other issues as well. So there's less potential for weeds, smaller nil revenue increment. You might get paid for it. I would have given it away free just to get the site clear. In a good site with very clean brash, you'll get paid for it. Possibly avoids need for expensive mounding, because if you have a clean site, maybe no need to mound again. I know on my site, if I could have gotten the brash off, I wouldn't have gone to the expense of mounding, because I have planted other land since which I didn't mound. And I found the trees have done just as well as the trees that were mounded. A small bit more management in the early year or two, but that's not suitable for every site, a dry site. Smaller nil revenue would possibly avoid the need for expensive mounding. Not possible in my case for the simple reason nobody would take it. It's too far away from the end user who might have possibly bought it in another scenario. So that's effectively it. So just to be clear on a few things, the critical stages are the preparation, getting in a good contractor, getting the best price you can from a reliable customer, and there are a good few of those around, in fairness. There were 3 or 4 large sawmills would have been interested in my timber, all very genuine. Supervision while it's going on is critical. Camera number 1, docket box number 2, regularly walking in and out and seeing what's going on, number 3. The final slide then, I'm only just putting it up, and I'm going to talk about really total profit minus total cost equals total revenue. So it's like the USC, and Tim didn't mention PRSI earlier on, but if you're under 66, I'm over 66, so I didn't have a problem with PRSI. But I was liable for USC at a marginal rate of 11%. And again, I'm not an expert on this at all. So the spread over 2 years meant that a lot of mine was at a lower percentage than it would have been if it was all gone out in 1 year. So that's effectively all I have to say. If anybody wants to ask a question or two afterwards, that's fine. Okay.